tree to make decisions, okay, on particular items, do research on a particular item. Having it down to a decision, a quorum of 2, all right, is not really giving you what you're looking for at that committee. What you're getting is, I would say, 2 driven individuals maybe to make decisions across town that might not be in the total interest of the town. I mean, and I use a thing we had here tonight, signs. All right, we can put together a committee. We let the committee get down to 2 people making the decisions on what signs should look like. Bring forth and say, hey, that's the committee, that's what spoke. We're really looking for a wider spectrum, which might be offered. So my thing is just the number. I do think there are committees, larger committees, that you do need to allow for lower numbers to create quorums. I do agree with that aspect of it. My thing is I just want to protect it from the bottom. The bottom end where you have a low number, you start out with a small committee and then allow it to get smaller. And that's what we have. That's where my issues are with this. So if you say, committees with 5 or more, I don't know. I don't know how do you, I was trying to think of how do I address that in this as opposed to, and because I do see the value of this article. I do think this article is necessary, but what I'm saying, my thing is the unintentional consequences of doing that is we might get a limited, I don't know how to put it properly, we might get to a point where we have, like I said, a quorum of 2, which is unintentional, where we only have a very small spectrum of the community represented.
Let me try to respond to that. So on a 3-member committee, 2 out of the 3 is the quorum, and if one member resigns, it's still 2 out of the 2, so the 2 quorum doesn't change in that example. In a 5-member committee, it's 3 out of 5, 1 resigns, it's still 3 out of the remaining 4. So the math doesn't change on the small committees. On the larger committees, it's got to be very frustrating for any committee to show up for a meeting to find that somebody's missing, and you went to the trouble of showing up for a meeting. You, the committee, are wasted a night. Secondly, the public is not served by a committee that is not able to get its business done, and the public may, in fact, be losing, depending upon which committee we're talking about.
Yeah, but I'd say in the larger committee, I'm 100% in agree. That's why I say we need this for large committees, but I'm just saying.
The small committee is not impacted. The small committee is not impacted. A 3-person or a 5-person committee is not impacted by this.
Steve, you had something.
The one point I want to make, if you take all of the boards and committees that are in town, most of them, including this one, make recommendations and not decisions. So in the case of any of these committees not having a large number of people, they're still offering a recommendation that an elected board or an elected officials or the town meeting or somebody else is actually endorsing one way or the other. So it's not a concentration of power in the hands of too few or anything like that. There may be a recommendation that's not as fully vetted as it should be or could be, but the decision-making doesn't rest within these committees because they're not elected committees.
But their recommendations are held highly. So, I mean, it's not like
they might be discounted by whatever
board
is looking at it, or elected official, and saying, well, I know this is only coming from 2 out of 3.
But they don't know that. They don't know how the constitution of those were made up. But I'm just saying, the recommendation that comes from our boards and our committees and everything are highly regarded, and they should be, because these are people putting their time in and putting work in to getting these things done. So I would hate to have different boards and committees not be, or be disregarded, because that's a disservice to the boards and it's a disservice to the town. But like I said,
anyway.
Huh?
So that can happen anyway.
Yeah, it could, but I'm just saying that I would hope not. But when like I said, I don't have a fix for this, but I do.
So let's fix what we can.
Yeah.
Let's vote. Let's vote.
Yeah, I withdraw what I was going to say.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I have a motion on the table. It's to recommend Article 42 as it appears on the screen, and it's been seconded. All in favor? Okay, I have all opposed. Okay, something against
Thank you,
2.
Darnell.
Thank you.
We don't have a quorum now, do we?
All right.
Unless all these other people
Well, that was
walk out.
exciting. All right, let's, I'd like to move on to the OPEB trust, just because it's one of your articles, and I would actually like, since I've got some language in there, maybe somebody can give me an instant okay or not on it. Let's see.
That's the
Oh my gosh.
Just get rid
Here.
of, just get that up. out there.
Hang on a second, folks.
Yikes.
Some changes to
Thank you.
Ted, I think you made changes to that document that you just closed.
I did.
You didn't save them.
No, it was the second time around, I think. I think it'll be okay. We will check,
Okay,
because Paul took a copy on his.
great.
Okay. Okay, this is the other post-employment benefits liability trust. Okay, and we didn't vote on it last time, Rick, because we had no numbers. Okay, now we have numbers, all right? We determined last time that the balance currently before an additional contribution was about 383 plus interest. Thousand. It turns out to be $389,023. I don't know, 73 cents, whatever. Anyway, so it would be the sum of the balance that's in that other post-employment benefit stabilization fund plus the amount we intend to contribute to the situation this year that we would want to state as the initial amount that's being invested in the trust. So, but I'm just kind of curious, between now and that, you know, when we publish the number of 389,000 and the end of June, there's going to be, I don't know, $200, $400 more interest, whatever. What happens to that? How do I close out this fund? How do I get the extra interest into that trust? Or does it sit there forever until we have a special article?
So you thought the town treasurer had an easy job?
Because there, I mean, there's, you know, just, so can I just say in my recommendation, and that the town appropriate the sum of $536,251 and any additional available interest for the purposes set forth in this article, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $389,023 and any additional available interest be raised from and to exhaust the balance of and close, boy, that's a horrible sentence, and close the post-employment benefits stabilization fund. Just be done with it. So we don't have to come back and go, gee, there's $400 sitting in this account.
So what you just read is not up there, right?
Yeah, it is.
In the
Where is
bold-
it
in the
then?
bold.
Okay.
It's in bold.
And the additional available interest for the purposes set forth on the meet set appropriation, and any additional available interest to be raised from and to exhaust the, I'm not sure that's a financial term, but
Sure.
exhaust the balance and close the post-employment. Maybe the
Here, I
word
take out
transfer.
the
How about,
of.
how about using the word transfer? And to transfer the balance, the remaining balance, transfer the remaining balance.
So, be transferred, what?
I was gonna-
Transferred,
I think you wanted to transfer after the balance, didn't you?
Yeah, I think it was wasn't the transfer after, it was after the balance, I think it was. After the word balance.
any additional available interest.
How about and the balance and any additional
And
available
the balance
interest?
transfer, and the balance transferred.
The balance right up on the, After the 389. We're not gonna do that. Nah.
Transfer.
I'll just see what happens.
Got a lot of ands in order.
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we wordsmith it? Tom?
I can say within the $400 there.
How about, can you put it transfer it June 30th?
Okay.
$400, who cares?
And any additional available interest
So transfer June 30th.
transferred.
We just, why don't we have,
We got the idea, but
why
town
don't we have town council
council.
just clarify that the transfer of what's not been appropriated? I mean, what hasn't, it hasn't been earned, if you will, yet. So it's, or transferred at June 30th, maybe the word transferred at June 30th to close. But I think we ought to get town council just to validate the language.
I think that's gonna be a yellow
Is
sheet.
that gonna cost us $400?
Well, as Tom said, you can let it revert to the general fund. Let it revert, let the balance revert to the general fund.
How does it revert to the general fund? How do we close the fund? In this,
They need to put it in the article.
we put it in the article to close the fund? Sorry?
You may need to put it into the article.
To close it.
Have the recommendation be within the scope of the article.
Yeah, why don't we have town council just confirm this language?
I really don't want to have another article that
No.
come along later that makes, allows me to close a fund that I could have done right
You don't want Peter standing up in town
now.
meeting, do you?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, this should be easier than it seems to be,
Yes.
okay?
To sweep the town, put all the money in it and augment it with.
Well, first of all, if you let's see, the transfer is not gonna take place till July 1st, because that's the fiscal year.
I
So
have a
you are
question,
gonna,
all funds.
Do we have to
Michael.
specify the amount, or can we just say the
We
balance?
have to specify, oh, I don't know.
any additional available, you already have the, it's loose right now, any additional available interest, right?
Any addition may be transferred.
You had June 30th, didn't you?
Can you scroll back up a little bit?
Scroll back up,
Yeah, a
where?
little bit on the top of that.
You have at June 30th, didn't you?
Top part, yeah. Okay, there you go. Yeah. See if the town votes or something.
What about something like, should there be any additional?
I think you ought to just let town council come up with the right words. They'll talk to somebody that's close to
Okay,
council.
here's the issue.
That's the problem.
We need to get this stuff done,
Right.
one way or the
Can't
other.
we just say the number, forget about the $400 and let it die? Just vote
It's
it.
just, it's just,
$400.
you know.
next year.
Yeah, just close
You know,
it.
whatever balance.
You'll have the same
It's
language.
not neat, you know what I'm saying?
I
It's
can
just
agree, but
sloppy
neither-
work,
neither is that.
you know?
What, is there an objection to saying the balance of the fund instead of naming the number and the interest?
We don't know. And what we're doing by changing it now to vote on it is we're not having town council approve the language.
Well, he hasn't approved
Which
this
could be-
he hasn't approved this language
Anyway.
anyway,
Yeah.
even with the additional piece,
Right.
so.
But we're gonna spend more time on it, talking
Right.
about it, than it will take to clear up the $400 next year.
Well, I'm gonna hold somebody to it.
Or in the fall, do it in the fall.
Paul will take care of it.
Can't we tidy this up?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Don't worry, Ted, the town administrator will be doing this next year.
Okay, so I have a revised recommendation. We cannot access that form. This is the problem, I swear. Never mind.
In the close, you know.
A problem. Okay, so the way the recommendation would be now, wow,
Just
okay,
edit
it would be,
the, actual article.
sorry. I'll put it in caps later.
Let's go down there.
Okay, recommend that the town vote to accept the provisions, blah, 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 and that the town appropriate the sum of $536,000 for the purposes set forth in this article, and to meet said appropriation, the sum of $389 be raised from the Post-Employment Benefits Stabilization Fund, and the sum of $147 be raised from funds certified by the Department of Revenue's free cash. There's your recommendation. Do I have a motion?
Well,
I'll move the article.
Second.
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 Okay, second,
Okay.
quick question for you.
Discussion then. Yes, okay, Darnell.
Quick question. At the end of this article, I mean, this is just can we, all funds to close out this account as of whatever, and the funds move into free cash? How would you do that? Or we'd have to do to clean that out? If we want just to clean it up, like Ted said, did this year.
The $400?
Well, whatever, we don't know the $400.
He's
It
asking,
could be
how do
30.
we clean up this
How do
fund if we can't do it in this
At the end of
article?
this, we did this, we don't care if the $400 go in this fund because it's already vested to the $500,000 that we need. So it's set. Now what we need to do is get rid of this account.
See, here's my question. If you have money in a stabilization fund, you need 2/3 of a vote of town meeting to get it out, okay? So that means if we don't clean it out now, how do you get it out? You have to have another article with a 2/3
Well,
vote
next
to
year,
pull
you're
out
gonna
the
continue to
change.
appropriate it, aren't you? Aren't you gonna continue to appropriate next year?
No, because we're moving it into
No,
the
it's
interest
going-
bearing
But
account.
you're gonna appropriate
going
funds
straight
to
to
this
the trust.
trust, aren't
To
you?
this trust,
How
right.
am I ever going to get an indeterminate amount of money
Well,
out?
out.
Because I will never know what the value in June 30th will be in mid-March when I'm writing the recommendation. I'll never know that.
John Flynn knows. We will ask him.
If you've only got $400 in there, you're not gonna
Might
generate
be
any
1,000.
interest anyway, but,
Well, right.
just on the discussion, I had asked last week which corner of town government would end up being responsible to manage this trust account, and
The statute controls.
Statute controls
that
that.
controls it. Where does it place it?
Say
Treasurer? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so, I mean, we're never going to get this out without another article unless we have
Or to sweep
language
this.
from Mr. Flynn that will allow us to drain it with this article.
Any available balances should be swept into the free cash or whatever. How do we put that on the end? How do we caveat this
Well,
to?
We don't
I
know.
just don't think it makes sense for me to freelance it. I think it makes sense to go to town council and just have a look at it.
So,
I think it makes sense to ship it off to town council in the morning and say, just answer that question.
You want to hold it off till Wednesday?
Yeah.
Can't you vote it, just have,
And then
vote it as it is, and the
2 days
$400.
If anything changes. Put it to bed.
Vote it.
Okay, we have a motion on the table and a second, and it may come back to haunt us. Who knows? Depends on how quickly Mr. Flynn answers. So,
Well,
all-
what do you mean by that? If we get language on Wednesday, we can reopen and revote it.
yeah, it doesn't matter.
right, if we don't get language on Wednesday,
It's
we're
on.
not voting
Okay.
it,
That's right.
Right.
okay?
Okay, that's good.
But at least we will have this vote done.
Good.
So all in favor? Okay, thank you very much. Wow. Okay, all
We're
right.
rolling now. We're rolling.
Okay, we are now going to take up
IT.
the question of the IT committee. I think everybody thinks this is a grand idea. Not everybody thinks it's a grand idea to put any money into this situation. Just to sum up, I think where we left off, we are getting a handout which may have possible suggestions for why this article should be accompanied by an appropriation or not. Okay, it looks like there might. We didn't get this in advance, so I'll take a second to read it. Thank you. When?
This afternoon, late,
Oh,
but to you and me.
My apologies. I guess we did get this,
You
but
sent it
I did.
to us.
I don't
right?
know when.
I did.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
that
know
was
when
like,
it
what,
came in.
6:30 or something like that? 7?
5:36.
Yeah, so it was,
I don't know. I must have been taking a shave for the camera. Something like that. But thank you. Yeah.
Ted, can you put the article on the screen, please?
Sure. Okay, wait a minute. No. Okay. Sorry, here it is. Article 16. So what I have up here right now is the article and amended for either a no appropriation or an appropriation from the selectmen's budget for fiscal year 15.
Ted.
Lee Michael.
Could I ask that you address the restricted items and identify which ones would cost money?
Yeah, so I think that the way that I tried to think about this was, what are the process steps you'd normally go through in developing a strategic plan? Those tend to be the same for whoever the client is and whatever the type of organization is. The content obviously differs. So I think that, to get at Lee Michael's question, I think the preparation steps could largely be accomplished at no cost. And if you think about the IT committee and what expertise they bring and what time they have available, that would in some sense dictate what they can get done and what they might engage a consultant, or as someone described it, possibly a coach to perform other duties. So I think the preparation stages could be accomplished at no cost. I think that if the committee was so inclined, it could accomplish the first two bullets. I would suggest that the identify and canvass stakeholders, clarify the organizational mandates, refine the mission and values, assess the environment, and identify and frame the strategic issues should be performed by a single individual or group of individuals. If that was a consultant, those would have a cost to them, but I think that would fall well within a $50,000 price tag.
Would that be an RFP?
Yes.
Paul?
Would the plan be to, like, if you get a consultant to do the planning and execution portion?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, given that when this went out last year, $50,000 didn't attract enough competitive bids. Would this be contingent perhaps on the idea that as you'd be able to attract the kind of consultants you'd want because they would know that down the line there would be more work for them? Or or do you think you could I'm only bringing it in light of the fact of what happened last year.
Possibly, but I think the more important change would be that the IT committee would have a network that we didn't have the benefit of the last time. And those individuals could talk about where the RFP should be sent.
Okay, so you'd have a...
So I think you have a much better chance of attracting a much broader response to the RFP.
Okay.
Darnell?
Leroy, I like this list because I think it does address the need for funding this committee. Because one of the things is that you either, I like the word you use, a coach or a steerer for the committee itself. When you talked about last year, we went out for a flat bid to have someone come in and actually do all the work. Their firm come in and do all the work and bringing in the bodies and everything. Right now, what we're doing is we're supplying the bodies and asking for someone to steer them. So it's a different starting point than where we started at last year. Last year, we were asking for someone to come in, bring your people in and do the work. This year, we're asking for someone to come in and be a coach, a steerer, somebody to help give guidance to the committee. So I do think it's warranted to have the $50,000 transferred out of the selectmen's budget into this committee to give them the stakeholders to get this thing up and going and done. I think we wasted a lot of time in the past years with the IT, and as a committee here, we see the constant growth in that IT department, IT budgets, and are we growing it well, or is it just expanding? So I think it'll be a good idea to spend that money, move that money into that department and have it be set up to get a professional to come in and work with the committee.
Okay, Steve?
Just kind of a housekeeping question on the RFP. Who runs that and who has the say on who's engaged for those services? Is this going to be run through the selectman's office, or does the committee get to?
Yeah, I think now that would be the committee's responsibility.
Okay. Do we need to say that in this article at all?
Well, I tried to get at that when in the assigned process oversight responsibility, this would be the IT committee, the second bullet under preparation. But we could be a little more explicit about that if you like.
Just in the article itself, because it doesn't really say.
Yeah.
So that might be sensible to just have, I don't know where precisely to put it, but to engage, let me come up with one. Shall include without limitation. After technology needs, maybe before submit recommendations, engage consulting services to help them manage the process, something like that.
Yeah, that would be desirable if we were going to attach any kind of money, whether it was 10 grand or 50 grand. That would be good language to put in there, I think.
Yeah.
Do we need to run that by the town council?
I don't think so.
In other words, we can spend money without just consulting the town council. We just can't free it from the clutches of a stabilization fund.
Let it go, Ted.
Okay, so we could make that change.
Maybe with guidance from consultants as needed.
Well, I think
change?
Steve's too. I shouldn't get involved in the discussion.
Excuse me, Lee Michael, what?
I'm trying to interpret what you want the words to say.
Well, there's you formally engage somebody to do this work. You don't just get help from them. So there'd be some kind of a negotiated contract, scope of work, budget that this committee is going to put that together, and then somebody's
Using consultants as needed? What are the words?
I thought I said it, to engage the services of a consultant to manage the process.
Does that work with the?
Yeah.
You wanted to say to engage services of a consultant to manage the process.
Right.
Where do you want to put that, Steve?
So the
After the word needs
process-
before the colon.
Responsibility.
But here,
Eighth
Right
line,
above it, to
technology
engage.
needs,
Yeah.
semicolon, no, above that one. Because it's before you submit a recommendation that you're gonna get the consultants, so.
So,
Technology needs, semicolon, you're on the right line there, bang,
There.
right
Right
there.
there.
what we're talking about?
Engage consulting services to assist in managing the process.
Engage consultant services.
Yeah.
Consultant to
Manage the process.
Assist in
To
managing.
assist in,
Can't talk, I guess.
Assist.
Assist in managing the process. Review, whatever you wanna call
to assist the process management.
to assist in,
Do you need anything after the word
Assist in the
services? Can it
management
just be
process.
services, semicolon?
to assist in the management process.
Ted,
as needed.
Yeah?
I think you're going too far, Steve.
I think in one of in the earlier discussion we had about this, was like some people were reluctant to appropriate $50,000 and have no idea what they're appropriating it for. So Leroy spelled out for us in this document some very specific things that you think that we would be spending money on.
Right.
And I would kind of like to see those just, aren't there these three things in the middle? Identifying campus stakeholders, clarify organizational mandates, and develop mission and values. Is those the things
Well,
that cost money?
I'd like to give
Kept
the,
going.
I'd like,
Keep going.
Get going.
I did, but I'd like to
Include
give
the
the
next two.
committee flexibility. So I think, I like, if you say to engage consultant services, I'd say as needed, then that gives the committee the flexibility to decide where they have expertise and where they need expertise.
I agree with that, Steve. Would that be all right with you?
Yep.
Services as needed, semicolon.
So this is a separate question from whether or not this attracts any money
Right.
from the committee, okay?
If you make that change, I'll make a motion.
So-
It's been identified, that's fine.
So, so the RFP would be the purview of the board itself.
Committee, the IT committee.
Okay, and right now, you think that a committee might get through the preparation largely at no cost, and the first couple of bullets you have here under planning and execution, and then you think that in order for them to move beyond into the identify and canvas stakeholders, the clarify organizational mandates, develop refined mission and values, and then continuing on to assessing the environment and identifying and framing the strategic issues, you think they're going to need help, professional help for that?
I think, as I said initially, it depends on what expertise the committee members bring to the table and how much time they have. It is conceivable that they could do some of those things.
I would
but
hope, otherwise,
If asked,
right.
if asked, my
Should be asked.
recommendation would be that the same person or set of people do identify and canvas stakeholders, clarify the mandates, refine the mission and values, assess the environment, and identify and frame the strategic issues. So it might be committee members, it might be a consultant, but my recommendation would be that the same individual or set of individuals perform those key tasks, because that's really going to form the basis of the strategic plan.
Okay, so last year, this was the highest priority of, or maybe not the highest, but it seemed like it anyway, the highest priority of the Board of Selectmen. So, could I ask a board of?
I
somebody
doubt that it was
from
the
board?
highest priority of the
No?
Board of
It's not the
Selectmen.
highest priority. It's
Okay.
higher than the DPW yard, but it's not
Okay.
the highest priority.
What was the highest priority?
Probably Henry's.
Which we
It's
took
not a
care
one-time
of, which we took care of, so, in terms, anyway, so you don't wish to address the question of how you feel about this now?
I think the problem I have here is, I I think the problem I have here is still the uncertainty of what the 50,000 buys. I still don't see a committee, does the whole study that was contemplated, the original study that was contemplated. So it still seems to me that this is kind of leading up to another RFP that's actually going to do a study in the end. And we don't know, A, whether we have the money, or so you're going to spend 50 grand on some kind of loose thing, and then spend some more money on the actual study. Because I don't see that a committee, if we weren't going to be able to do the study for 50 grand to begin with, I don't see that the committee itself is going to be able to do the study itself. So, and what seems to be contemplated here is more a planning process, planning up to doing a study. And I still think it's loose. And I still think the money's better spent on the other, another module for the badly needed financial accounting software. At least that's something that's specific. We know we need that.
Well,
I approach this a little differently. This is not planning to do a study. I said, drawing on a little bit of expertise I have, if you're going to do a strategic plan, what are the steps you need to go through? These are the steps you need to go through. At the end of these steps, you have a strategic plan.
But you don't have implementation.
Well, that's not the committee's responsibility.
No, but
That's the selectmen's responsibility.
how are you going to get to that point? A strategic plan is just saying, yeah, we need a plan of action. That plan of action could be, now we need a study.
No. A strategic plan says, we've agreed on where we're going, why we're going there, what we need to get there, and what we need to change to get there.
And then who's going to do the rest of this implementation of this? And how much are you contemplating? If this study was going to cost 80 or 90 grand beforehand, we're really going to be using the committee to basically pick up the slack of 40 grand?
I wouldn't.
Darnell wants to jump in here.
Okay, I'm gonna stop for a second. We spent $150,000, $125,000. The town is still going to implement that plan. Whether the end result of what we get for $125,000 or $150,000 is not a system that works, we have a structure in which to work in. What we're going to end up at the end of this is that structure in which we want to work in. This is not, we're not saying $50,000 is going to solve all the IT problems in the town. No, we're going to say is it's going to put us on the path we need to take in order to address all those issues we were asking somebody else to come in here and do. We have committees in this town right now that are doing similar stuff right now. We have a fire needs committee that's doing similar stuff right now, assessing what we need for fire stations and what we need, how many fire stations and everything else. And at the end of that process,
they're going to spend more money for another study.
Well, we're going to still need to buy fire stations. So we're going to spend money on fire stations.
Right.
1, 2, whatever it might be. At the end of this study, whether we use the committee model that we're proposing here, or we go out and just hire a consultant for $125,000, we're going to have to spend money to fix the system. So to say that, well, we're going to do this and then we're going to have to spend money, that's at the end of any study. Because you get the choice, either to do nothing and keep doing what you're doing, or fix the problems identified. So the money needed to get to that point, to identify, put together a steering plan or program, is what we're saying this $50,000 is needed to do. Now, am I going to say, oh, it's $50,000? I think that's reasonable as a number. I think it's reasonable as a number.
I know what 50 grand gets me in the other
end. Okay, well, it gets you a piece of software that might be used incorrectly or incompletely. So You can say it, because right now, we don't know what that software is going to give us, solve our problems. We have a strong feeling that it will. That's why we authorized to purchase it. Buying the other module before we get the first two in, really, if you want to be frank about it, hasn't told us or made sure that it's going to solve all our problems. It's not saying it's going to integrate with all the stuff we have right now. So
That's the whole point. It's an integrated system. It's an integrated system is the point.
No, that's part of it.
Right now,
But it
we're
doesn't say
using a
that-
disaggregated
I
system.
understand that, but I'm saying we're using the software as a piece to pull us together, closer together, right? But until we get the hardware in place, until we understand what we need to do on both the town side and the school side, you can buy all the software you want.
Right, do we have the right infrastructure? I don't know.
That's what we hope to get out of this
But in
committee.
order to get
That's
the
what
right
this
infrastructure,
committee-
that means spending more money too.
But I understand that. But you're not going to get nothing for nothing.
I'm
and-
just saying
and you're asking-
I'm just
you're
saying that
saying-
I don't think we know enough. I think you should let the committee get in place and see what they want, and then let
Well,
them
but the
decide
committee-
what
okay.
they need for money.
But the thing is, it's like we're talking about, if the committee's getting in place, the committee, if it's going to do anything, needs to spend money to bring professionals in to fill the gaps on that committee. And professionals cost money.
That's fine, let them come back to the next town meeting. Let them do
Well,
the preparation part.
like I said, right now you want to buy a module for $50,000 to get implemented, right?
I want to make sure the $50,000 is there to get that module, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I'm saying, what I'm saying right now,
Year, yeah.
I understand, but I'm saying is like, right now, we need to figure out how that module is going to work within the system we have now, and what we need going forward to make sure it works properly. Just to say, oh, we're going to get that
Right.
module,
So
it's great.
let's agree that we have a difference of opinion here.
Yeah, we do.
I mean, drastically on what needs to be done. One is strategic and forward planning, and one
would
is
like
body
to say
software.
something, and I know Leroy would like to say something, and I sure would like to say something, so let's keep moving here.
I think that the question is, like, I think we agree that this IT committee needs to go forward. So the question is, do we get the ball rolling or not? Is this $50,000 a waste of money in getting the ball rolling? I mean, I'm looking, what Leroy seems to be presenting here is the beginning steps.
Maybe, but why not let the committee decide that?
Well, the thing is, the committee will now have a budget that will allow it over a course of time before a next town meeting that then implements or appropriates more money for them. Because, I mean, what I'm hearing here, it's obvious the $50,000 is not going to cover what this problem is.
Probably not.
No, it's going to be nowhere near. But so more money is going to be needed down the line. So the question becomes: do we appropriate zero now, and figure out a way on no budget to come up with a more exacting figure that is going to most likely be far larger than $50,000, or do we give them $50,000 now to help them define what they're going to need down the line minus $50,000, because there's already a $50K component into what the whole overall total budget. In other words, what they're proposing is a multi-year plan on getting this rolling. So I think that is the basic question here.
And I guess my concern overall is, well, I should say, there are some IT professionals here, but I mean, I'm certainly not one. And most of us around the table aren't, including Rick and Leroy. So, we're going to appoint a bunch of professionals that are going to understand what the needs and the issues are. Let them decide what they need, and this committee's not going to be appointed overnight. This committee's going to take a little bit of time to find that number of professional IT professionals that A, are willing, and B, have the time to serve on a committee like this. So it's going to take some time.
Can I do a follow-up, please?
Sure.
Leroy, given what Tom's saying here, I mean, what's your viewpoint on the idea? I mean, what Tom is describing in a certain way is not all that different from what this committee does. You find the right people, they work pro bono, and they come up hopefully with solutions to certain problems. I mean, do we need to indeed put in seed money at all? Or can these initial phases be done by the people that are going to be selected for this committee without having to go to consultancy in enough time that by the time the committee gets up and running, that the next town meeting will come around and hopefully there'll be a different and bigger appropriation.
So 3 points.
Okay?
On the question of other uses, the school committee voted $160,000 to buy 3 modules to be implemented in fiscal 16.
Okay?
We're done with that. It's paid for. That's all we voted. That's what we would like to have happen. So the 3 modules that the vendor said they could implement first and that the town schools consolidation committee said should be implemented first cost $160,000. We voted that money. That's paid for. On the question of the IT committee, I think that as you can see from the language, one of the key responsibilities is the development of a strategic plan. It makes sense to me that we don't know exactly what their expertise will be. We know that it should be in the area of IT, but Darnell can tell you that's a broad range of skills and
You're speaking of the
applications.
committee members themselves, please.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's a broad range of skills there, and time available is a key part of that. These are going to be volunteers. It makes sense to me that we would provide them with
Sympathetic.
the amount, yeah, right, an amount of money, which was allocated for the same purpose, by the way, to engage assistance where they need it. And they would have that money available much more quickly than if we wait. Because, as we know, next year is an override year, and my prediction is there's going to be intense competition for resources. So I say, this is $50,000 that we have, this is $50,000 that was allocated for this purpose. It gives them the flexibility to operate. And I'm not sure what's going to happen next year. But I believe, the question that was posed to me was, if you only have $50,000, are you able to separate the process in such a way that some useful parts of the process can get accomplished for $50,000? This is my attempt to answer that question.
Okay, my comment
okay.
back on that?
I have Steve, and then maybe, I don't know where your Steve is going. Is it on the same exact issue?
Yeah.
Great. Let's have Steve, and then we'll go back to you, Tom.
Okay. Well, it's clear that we need to have a strategic plan for IT. It's possible that we get IT professionals to give us some free advice. Now, this town is filthy with attorneys. We don't ask attorneys to give us free legal advice. So we may not get anything, or we may get something less than what we expect. If we don't take at least a beginning step, then we push it off, and then we go to town meeting and say, well, we've got this study that we've put together that's now $175,000 instead of, we've already paid 50, we've gotten a product, here it is, here's the next step, much like when we did the planning exercise for the town master plan. It started out with a seed and grew, and we wind up with a public process with some assistance and with some self-support from the volunteer. So I certainly have my concerns over putting out 50,000 and having it not turn out what it was, but like Kevin said, you want a guarantee, you can buy a toaster. This is something where there's certainly some risk and some element of faith, but if you don't start and don't give them the opportunity to get the assistance that they may need, we'll be back at it in a year and arguing over whether we've properly priced it, because we couldn't put together this committee, and now we know that we need even more services than we need before, and yada. So I think that I'd be comfortable at this point with getting it started with this and seeing how it plays out from there. No guarantees, but what are you going to do?
Okay, Tom.
Okay, first of all, in terms of the financial software and the school town consolidation committee, that didn't recommend just the 3 modules. That recommended everything. And when it hit capital committee, I think Amy's suggestion was if we have to have 3, these if we can't afford them all, these are the 3 that would come first. That's not to say that the other 2 aren't important and we need them. the same argument that was made, that next year could be a hard year trying to get resources together, I think that we really need to get a handle on the very disaggregated accounts receivable and the fact that we have money that goes under the radar because nobody's keeping track of it, or people are keeping track of it off books, and anybody that runs their company that way is an idiot. But, and, you know, it's only common sense that you keep track of the money, and this system doesn't do it very well. So to risk losing that, I think, in a tight budget year, worries me. And again, this committee, I still think, you know, if we give this committee $50,000, they will undoubtedly spend $50,000. I don't know if we'll get the right result out of it or not, but, you know, I have faith that a good committee will be appointed. But why not let that committee come back again and say, we've studied the issue, we've done this preliminary work to understand the issues. Now we understand the issues, and we agree this is what we need. You know, here's the next step in the process. But we're telling the committee what the next step in the process is before we even form the damn committee.
Steve?
You can form committees that can't get out of their own way because they don't know how to work, how to organize themselves. And part of the professional services that you could get can help to get that organized and set it on the right path instead of letting this process spin its wheels for a year and quite possibly make no progress at all. I get that the software, you know what the cost is. You know, if it's that vital of a software, I dare say that somebody could have come in here and said that this is a priority for us instead of something else in this budget year, even though it's a tight budget year. So, you know, we had money set aside to do an IT study. It's not able to be completed. There's a new pitch to do another one. It's better thought out. It's more fleshed out, and the money's sitting there to able to be done. The need's no different than it was last year. It's more intense probably because it's another year gone by with things more obsolete, so.
Okay, Michael?
I work in IT, so I guess I'll weigh in on this, but I've had experience in companies where they bought software, bought packages that didn't have enough hardware behind them to run effectively. And so it causes a lot of frustration, and it's hard to sell using the product to the end users because the thing just is a dog, because it didn't. Now, I don't know that that's what's going to happen with this extra module. I don't know what the situation is with the servers. But I was wondering if it might be possible, you know, once we get some real expertise on this, people looking at it, it's like, could they consider the question of, is this a good idea, given what we have in the town? If we gave you the $50,000, could you buy this fourth module or fifth module and put that in it as a goal to say, maybe, you know, once we look at that, it's worth it to do that. It's better to have that thing in there and get our finances squared away, and it's going to work fine. I can't answer that question now, whether it's going to work fine or not. But it could be bad if you buy that stuff in the wrong order. I think that's where Darnell's coming from. If you don't have the horsepower, you could put the best system. You could buy the best system in the world, and it's going to just not work.
Right. We have the server horsepower, but
So we have competing goods here. You know, I will say that the first I heard about a desire for an extra module was last Wednesday. In my mind, that's nice, but a little late in the process. It would have been nice to hear about how important it was way earlier. It wasn't in your budget. It's not part of a capital improvement planning recommendation, planning committee recommendation for spending.
right.
And I understand why, but because of that, all of a sudden we're being asked to contemplate a tasty apple versus a tasty orange, and they may both be fruits we want in our basket. We're not quite sure if we can afford them both or either. Okay. Meanwhile, there's $50,000 in the selectmen's budget that ostensibly isn't being used for anything this year. we could look at ourselves and say, you know what this town needs? It needs $50,000 worth of trees, and the hell with you, you know? This is a problem. I mean, you know, I don't think they ought to be set one against the other, okay? I think they're probably both worthy. I have a quick question. How much is this module? Is it 50, or is it 30, or is it 20, or is it 57,
It's
or
approximately
82?
50. It's approximately 50.
It's approximately 50.
Something less than 50, but
Okay,
approximately 50.
so that's a question, approximately 50. Leroy, for you, if somebody said, you know what, I can't give you $50,000, I couldn't give a committee $50,000 to get this going, could they get something going with 30? I mean, you're talking about hiring a coach or a consultant to help the committee formulate its goals and identify some of the chores that need to be done in order to get there. Nobody's going to touch it unless it's 50? What do you think?
Well, that
Or can you?
Question that was posed last
No, I know,
week.
but can this be? Let's say you drop off the last identify and frame strategic
I
issues.
think
You
if
see what I'm
you-
saying? I don't mean to be disrespectful. Can this 50 be sliced into a smaller package if necessary?
Well, I'd say again, that wasn't the question that was posed.
I agree.
I think the further up the list you go, the less close you are to something that's
Right.
usable. So, I don't know. but
Okay.
My considered judgment was for $50,000, we could get down this far on the list, and that gave us a substantive part of a strategic plan. And I thought that was the question that I was asked. For $30,000, I don't know.
You don't know how far. Okay. So how, I guess another way to put the question is, how much more of this list is there before you send out an RFP for the $125,000?
Well, I said last time, we were working with this number that I don't know where it came from. I don't know how much, I don't know why we're working with the $150,000 number.
Oh, okay. You don't know why we're working with a $50,000 number?
$150,000.
Oh, 100. I don't know either. The question is, how much further down the list and how much more of the consultant would you need before an RFP was sent out for a larger study or a larger
I
evaluation?
keep saying, if you complete this list, you have a strategic plan and you've got an implementation plan. As people have pointed out, at that point, you've made some decisions about infrastructure, about staffing, about hardware and software, and that's going to cost you some money. But you've got a comprehensive plan that tells you how you're going to spend that money over the next 3 to 5 years.
Darnell?
I think what's happening here with this $150,000. The $150,000 for the study at the end of this list goes away. Okay, so what Leroy is saying, you have your strategic plan. That's what we're going to pay the $125,000 to the $150,000 for, was to have a strategic plan in which to implement going forward.
So
what we're doing is,
Darnell, let me clarify. So what you're telling me is that the committee process, the expertise they bring, along with the 50, is a quid pro quo substitution for the
initial study.
study that was rejected by outside consultants for $50,000 last time around.
Can I just point out, we got one bid, which I guess was $150,000. I don't think we should use that as the baseline for how much this would actually cost.
But actually, what it was they checked around with other towns and found out that was the average between 125 and 150 for what they had done. And what I want to break this link here as that, you're going to do this, spend this $50,000, get to the bottom of the list, and then go out and spend another $150,000 or something. That's not what we're talking about. At the bottom of this, once we get to the end, we have a strategic plan in place, then we go into the implementation of it. That's what this is. This is a strategic plan. So we know what we need for hardware. We know what we need for additional software. We know what we need for additional staffing. We know what we need to get this thing going. Now, those things cost money. It could cost, $500. I don't know what it's going to cost. We may have to change the way the school and the town IT department look because it might not be in the best structure. Those are the things that the additional money at the end of this plan will be paying for. It's not paying for another strategic plan. This will be the strategic plan. Okay? And what I would say, to answer your question more fully, you really don't know if it's going to cost us $30,000 or maybe we need another $20,000 based on what we find as the expertise in the initial staff, or what the staffing of this committee brings compared to what it's missing. So if we get a nice retired computer consultant somewhere, we might not spend all of it.
Okay, so Darnell.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, this process gets us to the same place as the process that was proposed last year?
Yes. That's what this is. That's what this is talking about.
You all in agreement with that analysis?
Not me.
Not you? Okay.
I'm dubious that that can be
This
done.
is missing from it, right? The things with no asterisks, they aren't.
Everything has an asterisk.
No.
No, not
Except
the bottom
for-
three.
except
Oh,
the
the
bottom
bottom
three.
four, no. So you're gonna fall short. That was the.
Right.
But the question was,
Get
for
started, break it up.
$50,000,
Yeah.
what do
How
I
far
think
you
we
get?
can get?
What I'm saying.
And we aren't at the strategic plan yet with the
Yeah, so-
$50,000.
No,
That's
$50,000
one
isn't gonna buy it.
asterisk idea.
Yeah, it's
We're
not
not
gonna
going.
buy it.
So the
I think
question,
you're less
Then is-
optimistic than what you should be. but-
how much more do we, is that the point then at which you go out with another RFP for God knows what? And how much of the work that's been done before lowers that cost?
If you've identified and framed the strategic issues, then it is quite conceivable that the committee could formulate and organize the strategies and develop a strategic plan. You've basically got the assessing the environment, identifying these strategic issues, and clarifying the organizational mandates are the heart of the plan. So it's conceivable that the committee could do that.
Paul?
Guys, we spent half an hour guessing. Okay, that's what we've been doing, we're guessing. Okay? The $50,000 may finish the strategic plan. It may not. It may need more resources later. So the question is, do we want to spend $50,000 now and get the ball rolling if that's indeed what the $50,000 is going to do? Or do we do nothing and allocate the money somewhere else? So we're just, like I said, we're just involved in guesswork here. We don't really know, how it's going to turn out. We're back to Kevin's toaster. We can't get a guarantee, until we buy it. So I think at some point we should, given that it's 5 minutes of 11, we should probably think about voting on this, I think.
Okay. I know Chuck has a comment, and no?
I was just going to say, I think, I don't think there's a chance that this committee is going to be up until the summer.
Well, it's not gonna-
Later, right? So I think we're kind of just all arguing about something that's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not prepared to support the module because I don't know anything about it really. So, I'm all for snow and ice or free cash or whatever. We tried. You couldn't get the thing done. The $50,000 is just going to kind of flush through the system, and we'll have at it next year with whatever. With the committee will get together. They'll figure something out, and then they'll be in front of whoever they need to be in front of to get some money appropriated.
Us.
Well, or maybe the capital committee, or it'll follow the normal course at that time. It's just going to take too long.
Okay, I got Mike and then Steve.
I'm in favor of giving them the $50,000 and putting the module in the mix, letting them get some experts in here who know something about it, look over and see maybe does it make sense to get the module or not. There's definitely a bunch of IT needs. It's giving the wrong message to say we're going to give you a zero appropriation. We've already found a couple things we could spend the money on, and that's all. That's my 2 cents.
I think we can always find things to spend money on.
No, I think No, but we had $50,000 for IT. I think I'd be voting in favor of giving them $50,000 as long as they could look at whether whether it makes sense to buy the module now or not.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, and Chuck, last week when this came up, I was thinking the same thing that you were, that it would take a long time to get going. And then it occurred to me that if they get to a point and then they need money to go ahead, and they have to put the brakes on until the next fiscal year, that any momentum that they've made will be lost, and they may lose interest in it for not being able to do anything, and then back to square two, if not square one. I think there's a risk there of, you know, if there isn't funding, then don't get it going, rather than if we got some money to help them along and try to look for the expertise and maybe get lucky and get the whole thing done for 50, possible, unlikely. I don't know that you have to do a new RFR. You could construct the contract that you could add additional services as, additional money was made available, so you could take that step out. But, to not give them the tools or the access to the tools that they are likely to need really means that it's probably a whole year off before we do anything. So it's, put the money to it now, or just let it go away and start from scratch next year.
Okay, so as I said before, these are competing goods, okay? Voting for one doesn't necessarily mean not voting for the other. We're not quite at the end of our process. We haven't voted all the capital requests yet. We have to vote them in strange fashion because of the $300,000 Pickens override possibility. So we may only be able to vote some now and hold off and plan on voting the rest should that go through. We are looking at, and I sent you all out the options sheet, which got trimmed by about 16,000 if you hadn't looked at it recently. But at any rate, we may have, at the end of the day, a couple $100,000. I would like to probably put it all in this current year's reserve fund, or at least